I believe it was 2:14 in the morning. So charge me additional. I've got a 43 running from me. That was the last thing he said. Working area 2 actually had the robbery call, came, and I said, here, take him. I got to go. So I started running code to back to Biscayne Boulevard again. And just before I get there, Frank Rodriguez, he was a canine officer, got there. He was the first on the scene, and he's advised, start rescue. I got 2 officers down.
Thanksgiving weekend 1983. Only 5 officers were assigned to cover an entire Miami-Dade, Florida district. Rick Rossman was one of them. By 2:14 that morning, 2 of his partners were dead.
If you wore the badge in Miami-Dade County in the 1980s, you felt it. The rules had changed. Every call had more weight. Every encounter could turn in an instant. Things were different. South Florida basically was coming apart.
And the 80s were a crazy time. It was referred to as the cocaine cowboy era. And the violence during that decade was beyond the scope. It was truly out of control. But we share something unique as to where our assignment was as young, new cops on the police department. And back then it was called the Metro-Dade Police Department. And 4 of our personal friends were killed in the line of duty. And as young cops, that's something that you never forget and something that you always hold on to for the rest of your life. So Stephen Corbett was the first officer that was killed. He was a new officer riding with his field training officer when he was feloniously struck by a vehicle, drug under the vehicle for 100 yards, and died on the scene. Richie Boles and David Strzalkowski were attacked by an ex-con lunatic who shot and killed them in cold blood. Joey Martin was on a traffic stop, stepped out of his vehicle, and was shot and killed. The commonality of all of these 4 officers' murders is that Rick was one of the first to be on the scene of 3 of those horrendous homicides. And so, Rick, we're going to start off talking about Richie and Dave, and you were working the midnight shift, and I'm just going to let you get into the story.
Okay. It was Thanksgiving weekend. And as you know, it was it was a Sunday night, which is 2-area patrol back then, which is common for the district, which meant you would have maybe 7 to a squad. If you had a full company, you have 14. But that particular night, because of the holiday weekend and people out on injuries and people calling in sick, we went out and there was only 5 of us working for the whole district. And when I found that out, I told the Sarge, I go, this is like suicide. Can't you call someone else in? And he said, my hands are tied because of the overtime. And we went out. And my first call, there were already like 13 calls holding. I was dispatched to a missing person, a lady from a old folks home. And by the time I got there, they said they last seen her walking out back. And I walked out back. It was a big rock pit. And I saw her. Aviation came out and, he said, yeah, she's floating. And when I looked at her, I could see that she was trying to talk to me. Her lips were moving. So I said, she's alive. I'm going to go in and get her. And the helicopter's going, no, you can't. Wait for backup. And I go, there is no backup. I go, it's just me. So I was familiar with the area. So I went in, pulled her out. She was alive. Rescue came and, they basically saved her. But while we're doing this, there was a call about fire rescue requesting assistance at a gas station on Biscayne Boulevard. And they'd been waiting about 30 minutes with someone, that they needed assistance, and we were short. And I said, well, I'm soaking wet. So I went home. I happened to live close by, and while I'm changing, the call went out. Now it was an emergency. They had upped it from a routine call to a 2, which is code. So at this point in time, I'm dressed. I said, okay, I'll take it. But I was on the west side. Richie was on the east side. He would just come out, and he was the Aventura unit. As you know, Evan, he was assigned to that particular area. So Richie gets there and he slows me down. And When I get there, I see this gentleman, later known to me as Charlie Street. He was a career criminal, just out of prison. He was released by shortages, I think they said. And Richie was talking to him, and he wouldn't answer Richie. Just basic name stuff, date of birth, where you're from. And he wouldn't answer Richie's, but fire and rescue would repeat Richie's question and he'd answer it. And Richie ran him, which is basically, checked a computer check. And he came back with no past. And back then, this is the 80s, you don't have the instantaneous stuff. And he came back with no pass because it was local. Everything else was down. So we weren't access to his battery and assault on law enforcement previous in Deerfield. And I still have to write my report about the lady. So I'm sitting there writing the report. And he goes, well, we can't really do anything. We're short. And I said, well, he needs to go to jail. He's lying to us. He goes, well, we're short. We can't afford to lose you for 3 hours. I go, okay. So I start writing my report. They call Medicar because that was a solution. Rescue had brokered, get him in the Medicar, take him to Jackson for his medical so-called issues. He gets in the ambulance, and that was the last I saw of him, because then now they're putting out a robbery in progress down on the west side. One of the stop and robs over there. And Al Lepore, the sergeant, he goes, I'll back you. So the two of us start running over there. And as we get there, this, individual starts fleeing across the road, and he's being chased by the clerk, who's clearly wearing the 7-Eleven stuff. And I move in my car to a point to where basically the subject runs into my car, and we're able to take him into custody. So I've got a robbery subject in my car. And about this time now, a call goes out back again on the east side about a man screaming for help. And again, she's raising, because there's only like 5 of us, and can you clear? And I go, no, I can't clear. I've got a robbery subject in my back seat right now. So that's when Richie, says, okay, I'll take it. And Dave, who was working the beach, which was, one of the other assignments that we had to staff, and he was closer to Aventura, said, I'll take the backup. So I go, the two of them start going to the call, and I'm waiting for the check to come back on the robbery subject, because as it turned out, it didn't happen tonight. It had happened a couple nights previously. And now you had to look up the case. Okay. Then Richie gets on about this time. I believe it was 2:14 in the morning. So charge me additional. I've got a 43 running from me. That was the last thing he said. And a
43 means a disturbed
crazy person. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Kind of like the LA's, whatever they call it, with Van Halen's out. Well, but basically, yeah, he says, start me additional. And then it's dead silent. Nothing. And at the point in time, one of the other officers working Area 2 who actually had the robbery call came, and I said, here, take him. I got to go. So I started running code to back to Biscayne Boulevard again. And just before I get there, Frank Rodriguez, he was a canine officer, got there. He was the first on the scene, and he's advised, sharp rescue, I got 2 officers down. So when I pull up, there's both Richie and Dave are lying in the road. There's only one police car, and I've got a gentleman, there was a car parked over by where Dave's car was. And I go, did you see what happened? And he goes, yeah, I did. And he describes to me about a large black individual who was walking down the street and threw like a muffler at him, or a big piece of rock or metal that hit his car. So he dials 911 saying this. And he goes, about the same time as he was doing this, 2 police cars came, and he saw one pull around to the front of where the subject was standing. And he's in the middle of southbound Biscayne Boulevard. And Richie pulled around to the south side. So the way he described it is they had the police cars in between, and hit and street was in the middle. And they got out.
Charlie Street. The subject's name was Charlie Street.
And Charlie, if I remember correctly, was like 6'2", 230, 240, hard as big. I mean, he was strong as a bull.
Just got out of prison, so he was.
Oh yeah.
A beast.
He was just he was just huge.
Rick, let me just ask. I'm a little confused. I thought earlier Charlie Street got in an ambulance and they were taking him away, and Somehow he got out of the
Yeah,
ambulance and now it came back. What happened?
That's what I'm trying. That's what I'm building up to. Yeah.
Okay.
Because when the guy tells me this and describes him, and that he was walking up Dixie Highway, see, it wasn't my call, so I didn't take notes. I didn't know the subject's name or anything because Richie had all that. Richie wrote it because I had my own report to do. So I raised the dispatcher, and this is one of the things where I feel like maybe I did wrong that night because I wasn't maybe thinking again. What is because he had taken a police car, so he was able to hear now what I was saying. So what I basically asked the dispatcher, I said, go to Channel D, which is our records, find out the subject's name and information that we had ran earlier at the gas station, and then check with Medicar and see if they let him out. And about 5 minutes later, she came back and said, yes, Medicar let him out of Miami Gardens in Dixie, which was literally where he was walking north from, coming up Dixie Highway, and the original call about a man screaming, on Dixie. And then when he crossed over to Biscayne, I think that's why he threw the rock. He was trying to steal a car to get back to, I believe it was Deerfield
Beach, Florida.
Yes, where he was in prison for aggravated assault and attacking, I think, a police officer there. But so now I'm trying to figure out what had happened, what in place, and I'm looking at them, and rescue comes. And they're both, they're both, to all purposes, they're dead. Rescue takes them, and they said that, takes them to the hospital where they died later. But from what he explained to me, I'm basically being in altercations with both of them, arresting subjects. Richie, we used to do the LVNR, even though we weren't trained for it yet.
The lateral vascular neck restraint, the chokehold, basically.
Yes, basically, he had worked for Seminole Police Department, so he had been trained to do it there. And I know one other time with this large individual drunk who was like 300 pounds, Richie successfully, put the guy under, and we were able to subdue him. So the way he described to me, it sounded like Richie was right around behind him trying to do the LVNR, and Dave was doing we do the old Miami-Dade takedown, got in low around his waist, and they're trying to control him. That's what the guy says. He's trying to reach him, and that's when the witness said he got. I think he basically just ripped Richie's gun from his holster, and then because Dave was down low, and when you bend over, your vest kind of makes a U, and because he was there, I think that's when he fired one shot underneath Dave's vest, and then another one I know for sure he shot him in the cheek, like right under the eye. I remember that, and then Richie was over about 15 yards south of him, but his car wasn't there. So that's when I realized, I go, shoot, he took the police car. And I think that was part of the bolo. I said, he's probably heading north. He's in the police car. But again, he was able to hear all this. And what the witness told me is that when he saw him, Richie tried to get to his car, and he fired a couple shots at Richie, and he shot one time at him. I think he had a bullet hole in his car. I don't remember, but Richie apparently got to the side of the police car, driver's side, where he kept a shotgun, and that's where Street came back over there and shot him again. And I think he might have fallen because they said that Street ran him over. So Richie might have fallen in such a way. Now that Street was able to take the police car and drive north.
So the crazy thing about this was both Richie and Dave were shot multiple times with their own guns, especially Dave's gun was taken after Dave was dead. Well, I guess when he emptied, after he emptied all the rounds initially. He literally pulled his vest back from his. So
they're trying to say he's crazy. He was thinking
and unloaded the firearm into his torso.
Yeah,
both of them had been shot in the head. They were both, horrendously murdered. And then Charlie Street took one of their police cars, ran them over in the street, and then fled north out of Miami up towards the Fort Lauderdale area. And that's when Rick was literally on a shit hunt. You were like gonna find this guy no matter what, and just go with that, Rick.
Yeah, at that point in time, now rescue were loading them up, and people were trying to sit there, and they're trying. We didn't even have enough people to secure our perimeter, on a crime scene. So, thank God for North Miami Beach. North Miami came down, and they were able. But I said, and the guys were like all distraught, and I'm like, I know this fuck, this
That's
guy. He's not familiar with the area. He's lost. So what I figured is maybe if he was driving, if I went straight down Ives Dairy, which was adjacent to where we were, I-95's a mile and a half away. So where there's an overpass there. For the Stephen Corbett overpass. And I'm sitting there waiting, figuring that he's going to maybe drive north or south. I got a chance I can find him if he got lost. And he finally finds his way to I-95, but I can grab him. So I'm sitting there, and literally about 5 minutes later, Broward BSO gets on saying that they think they have our subject in custody. Can I go there and identify him? By that time, I'm already halfway there. And I get to, I believe it was Sterling Road, and they had taken him into custody. A unit he had advised that he saw the car coming with one headlight out and thought it was suspicious at this time in the morning, because by this time it's now close to 3 a.m. on a Monday, and it had a headlight, and he saw the subject driving it. It kind of looked like our thing. So he made
cutting to the chase there, Rick. So Charlie Street, the murder suspect, fled north into Broward County in the marked Metro-Dade police car, with the overhead lights going and whatnot. So several police officers saw this vehicle. They weren't quite sure what the deal was because of the radio communications between the counties.
Yeah.
Charlie Street, as you were just talking about the vehicle with the one headlight, he realized that he needed to get out of the police car, and he carjacked a woman at gunpoint and took her vehicle, which was the vehicle with the one headlight, correct?
Yes. And apparently he even said that he was waiting in Hollywood in ambush with the shotgun. He was smart enough to take Richie's shotgun from the police car. So he still had the revolver and he had the shotgun. And he was waiting for a Hollywood unit or BSO unit to come so he could shoot them and take that car so it wouldn't be as yang. And like I said, remember, he was listening to my transmission. So I guess he knew.
While he was in their police car, he could hear all the radio traffic if he was smart enough to figure that out. But Rick, clearly, this is an emotional, chaotic, hectic situation, and you get there, and they need you up in Hollywood near Fort Lauderdale to identify this guy as the shooter, and you get there, and it wasn't a pretty situation.
Yeah, he was in the back of the police car. So they walk over to where he's handcuffed, and he's in the back of the patrol car. I mean, again, I don't remember any of this. This is what they told me, because, like you said, it's maybe tend to black things out. But when I looked at him to identify him, and I knew right away it was him. He smiled at me, and that's when they said that I looked like I was going for my gun, and I don't. So then they grabbed me and they put me in the back of a police car. They kept the door open, but they had Al Lepore come, and so
just to settle you down. I mean, everybody has to realize that's listening to this. We are human beings and human emotions, and so many of those things. And I know Craig is going to get into that in a little bit about the toll that it takes psychologically and mentally, and the number of traumatic incidents and whatnot. But I want to get into a little bit more in the aftermath of all this, Rick, and I know you remember this vividly. We were there. We went to the funeral, and we went to a lot of funerals back in the day. Way too many funerals, not only for our agency, but so many of the other agencies. Yeah. So we went to Dave and Richie's funeral, and Dave's wife, Debbie, was a nurse. Right. And she made the determination that she wanted to have an open casket viewing. And people tried to talk her out of that. It was a little bit crazy, because Dave was a small guy to begin with, and he was shot in the head, and like you said, in the face. And I remember walking up at the viewing and looked in the casket, and he's in his dress police uniform, and his head looked like a pumpkin. I mean, literally looked like a pumpkin. His eyes were stretched sideways, almost like an Asian. His nose was flat. The sides of his mouth were pulled back because of the swelling. It was so unbelievable. I mean, I can still see it today after how many years later, right? And her argument was, I want everyone to see Dave in the casket, the way he looks, his head swollen like a pumpkin, because I want every one of these officers to remember this so it won't happen to them. And you want to talk about something that was unbelievable. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, and Debbie's something special. The other thing you know that because of that, she went and joined COPS and became the president, which is Concerns of Police Survivors. And
Yep.
Debbie's a fantastic person. She's just amazing. And she was just livid because the whole thing was that Miami-Dade dictated to both of those widows what was going to happen. And she would, because they both had to have the same funeral in the same location, and it was just a lot of the things our department did was wrong. And that's what was her impetus to go with COPS. And she's an amazing individual.
You know, I remember something else too that really kind of affected me. And I'm not going to mention names, but there was a particular sergeant, and he decided that he was going to volunteer to dress their bodies. And I thought, oh my God, like this is kind of horrendous. And so for whatever reason, he volunteered to do this instead of the funeral home people, and wanted to make sure that their uniforms looked proper and everything in the casket. And he literally dressed them and put them in the caskets. I thought, I don't know. I don't think that's something I can do. And I have to say, we all have our breaking points or our defining moments in our careers. And that was one of them. I mean, you and I and so many of our friends, we were like good soldiers. We were good soldiers that we were going to go and represent and go to every funeral. And Florida was like the number 2 or number 3 state in the United States for line of duty deaths. And we were going to funerals all over the place. Yeah. And finally, like after this and so many others, I said, you know what? For my mental health, I can no longer do that. I'm not going to any more funerals, nobody's funeral. Boom.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, to be honest with you, I stayed outside Richie's. I did a traffic detail because I couldn't go inside the church. I wasn't inside for Richie or Dave's memorial. And police funerals, I can't do. Even when Taps is played, sometimes, it still kind of brings all that stuff back. So.
Rick and Bill alluded to it. We've had on this show about the mental health of officers who have to deal with so much trauma in their careers. The statistics tell us that most officers, on average, deal with about 400 to 600 traumatic events, very similar to what you've just described in very vivid, powerful terms. And yet the average person deals with maybe 2 or 3 in their lifetime, right? So I'm just, there's so many questions here. One is, okay, right after this incident, after the funeral, we're talking the 1980s, a different time than what happens today. Was there any counseling offered to you? Were you back on the job the very next day? I mean,
no, definitely not the next day. Definitely not the next day.
Yeah, good.
As Bill was saying, they actually ordered me to write the report, but that's neither here nor there. But later, Bill, the department psychologist, was always trying to get me in and sit down and talk. And I guess it's what I'd have to say. It's personal with everyone because I've never really talked to anyone professionally about this, and and I think it's just something that you have to deal with individually. Everyone, and like I said, I know that I still have some of my these issues and stuff, but it's just you just either have to handle it or you don't handle it, and that's just the way I've handled it. I just kind of like put it in a little box and just buried it back in the corner of my mind. Yeah.
And Craig, what was interesting about Rick just said was at least our department had a psychological services unit. We had on-staff psychologists. That was very, very rare back in the 80s. Not too many agencies had that. That was kind of, cutting edge for all of us. But, also, I'll tell you what, the whole police culture, it's very stoic and very macho, and like showing your emotions wasn't really the way to go back then.
Yeah,
and true. What I'm hearing is that it was voluntary, right? Like you say, the psychological services were available, but this is what changed over time based on what I've experienced with others in the profession, that today it's mandatory, right? I mean, there is no, do you need help? Come to us if you think you need help. We're going to give you help because we know you need it. All right. As Bill said at the very beginning of the show, officers are human beings, right? You can't deal with death and friends that are lying in blood in front of you and not have an impact on your emotions and on your life. Yeah. And so today I'm so thankful that we've come a long way in how we treat officers who are involved in officer-involved shootings or line of duty death situations that you've described. We're not making it voluntary. And I think it's helped a lot. A lot of officers who needed help maybe didn't even realize they needed help. And Rick, it sounds like maybe that's your case. Like you say, you kind of compartmentalized the trauma of that event, and you went on with your life, and you went back on the job the very next day, and you had to deal with it in your own way. And I have to believe it had an impact on your life.
Oh, no doubt. I wouldn't dispute that.
And sure, it has an impact. And we're going to talk about this next story, which I think has probably had an even greater impact. And Rick and I had some, experiences, and we're going to talk about that again in a minute with Joey Martin's murder. And, you, as you said, Craig, you compartmentalize these things. And, Rick and I shared some of this, and we've talked about it, but, we never really talked about it until right before doing this podcast interview today, where Rick and I kind of threw it around on the phone and went back and forth. And, I had to always believe in my mind that Rick was carrying some heavy, heavy weight from the crazy shit that he had to deal with in these situations. But, I never asked him that because we just kind of dealt with it. And we were there and we could talk about it. But we never, as cops, you just don't really go up and put your arm around somebody and say, "How are you?"
Rick's story isn't over. Part 2 picks up with Joey Martin. Hit subscribe and it's already waiting in your feed.